On today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 worst places to live in the Tampa area. Basically anything within that red circle. Now, there could have been about 40 different areas that we could have had for today's video. So if your town or your area ended up on today's list, it's unexcusable. There was a lot of competition for these top 10 positions. So if your town made it on this list, it belongs on this list. There were plenty of places to pick from in the Tampa area. So if you're curious about Tampa or you just want to know what the worst parts of Tampa are as a metropolitan area on today's list, you're going to get to know 10 places in the Tampa area you definitely don't want to move to. These are high crime, undesirable areas that are easily the worst places to live in the Tampa area. And again, today's list could have easily been about 40 different places if we included them all. A lot of bad areas like South St. Pete are not on today's list. Pinellas Park is not on today's list. So if your area made it on this list, it belongs here. Let's get to it. Number 10 is the area of Palm River, located east of Tampa. This suburban area is one of the worst places you could live in Tampa. It is congested, highways and roads leading nowhere. There's a lot of swampy and marshy areas, which means there's a lot of mosquitoes. There's a lot of highways and a lot of railroad tracks and a lot of traffic congestion. And the areas in here are also plagued with a massive amount of homelessness, poor mobile home parks, major highways. It really is nothing out here scenic to look at. Just about everything in this part of Tampa is basically low-income housing, and it is one of the most unsightly and worst areas to live in the Tampa area. Many of the residents here live in extreme poverty, rather in homeless camps, mobile homes, or run-down residential neighborhoods from decades past. One of the worst places to live in Tampa. Within Tampa city limits, there's a lot of bad neighborhoods, but on the north side, you're going to find the area known as University. Throughout the entire city of Tampa, whether the east, the west, the south, and of course the north, you're going to find bad areas throughout the whole city. But on the north side of the city, the area known as University has one of the worst reputations in Tampa. This area is mostly high-density apartments and a lot of duplexes, efficiencies, and areas for low-income people that work in the Tampa area. It's an overcrowded neighborhood where gang violence is part of day-to-day life. If you're moving to the Tampa area, anywhere near this address of University is best avoided. The area even had riots a few years ago where they burned down buildings. Many of the business owners retracted from this area. After all, you're serving a community, and the first chance they get to burn down your business, they go for it. The University area is an area you should definitely avoid. Number 8 is Sulphur Springs, located north of Tampa. This neighborhood is known as a place of hookers and dealers. Whether in the daytime and especially at night, the streets are filled with all types of illegal activity. Some people even say it's an open-air market where anything illegal can be found easily. Living in this neighborhood will mean that you're constantly dealing with crime on a daily basis. The neighborhood looks nasty, run down, full of garbage, and many of the people that live here are nothing more than criminals. This is the type of neighborhood when you say you live here, people are automatically going to assume the absolute worst of you. And many people who live in this area even lie to their employers about living here because the reputation the area has already speaks for itself. It's the type of place where even your Uber driver may cancel the ride and decide not to pick you up. If you live in this part of Tampa, your life is cursed just by the fact you live here. Number 7 is Holiday, Florida, located along US 19 in Pasco County. This is one of the worst addresses you could have in the Tampa metropolitan area. This area is 82% white, and they are dying off quickly of overdoses. As expected for Pasco County, this area's biggest challenge is the fact that the residents can't get off the illegal substances, and it's brought many of the people here to ruin, if not the entire community itself at this point. The per capita income in this area wasn't even $20,000 a few years ago. This area is denoted for being plagued with homelessness, vagrants, users, dealers, and of course, women walking the streets at night. It really is a neighborhood or city and area that has lost all self-respect. And when you say Holiday, Florida, nothing good comes to mind. Even getting off at a gas station here late at night, you can expect people asking you for money. Number 6 is Newport Richey, also in Pasco County along US 19. The population here used to be about 90% white many years ago, but today it's down to about 74%, as most of the white population is dying off from drug overdoses. And the ones that are left don't look like they're in good condition. This area is again plagued with homelessness, lack of opportunity, and a vast percentage of the population is dealing with addiction problems. It really is one of the most depressing places in Florida. It's not a surprise that the US 19 corridor of Pasco County dominates today's list. This area really is one of the most depressing places in the entire state of Florida. And while the Tampa area has opportunity, this area is completely devoid of options. When the residents aren't at a Trump rally, they're at a pipe rally getting high. Residents living in rural-looking areas here report their properties are constantly getting broken into by homeless people stealing anything they can grab. Number 5 is Mango, Florida. This is a decrepit area of mobile homes in Hillsborough County. The population in Mango, Florida is 90% white. The per capita income is $15,000. About 10% of families, 12% of the population are below the poverty line, and 20% of those under 18 are living in poverty. No wonder they have so many problems. At night, this area looks like a complete zombie wonderland with people hanging out outside of gas stations high on fent, leaning over, asking for money, anything they can get to survive. Poverty and misery here is everyday and present. I recently got an Uber ride out of this area and I had to cancel it because the people involved were clearly trying to orchestrate a deal and use the Uber driver as a mule. Had to cancel the ride. It really is a poverty-stricken area and the only activity going on here is illegal. Number 4 is Gibsonton, Florida. Here, about a quarter of the people under 18 are living in poverty. Despite the Tampa area growing tremendously, this area hasn't really benefited other than with more traffic congestion. People actually don't want to move here, but they have to drive through here, getting somewhere better. This area is about 73% white, and it is dealing with a lot of problems. Homelessness, addiction, poverty, lack of opportunity, traffic congestion, and horrendous living conditions. The per capita income here was less than $16,000, meaning that almost 18% of the population in general is below the poverty line, including 12% of the population over 65. That means you have a lot of elderly people that are barely making enough money to eat. As the increasing cost of insurance in Florida and rents, living in this area is really misery. Once known for being the retirement of the circus, today it's known for poverty and misery. Number 3 is East Tampa, known as the worst part of the city limits of Tampa. This is definitely the worst of all the sections in Tampa. It's an area that is predominantly African American, but it does have some diversity. It's a poor area known to have most of the concentrations of homicides and crime in the city. It also has a lot of traffic congestion as well, being part of the urban core. This area continues to have some of the worst analytics for income and poverty of anywhere in the Tampa area. It's not as affected by drug overdoses like the north side of Tampa that's predominantly white. In this part of Tampa, the real problem is violent crime and homicides. Much of East Tampa is still predominantly African American, and much of the growth, investment, and gentrification that other parts of Tampa have seen haven't reached this area, and it continues to be an area struggling with lack of investment. Without a doubt, when you talk about the worst part of Tampa city limits, this area of East Tampa wins by far. Number 2 is Moon Lake. This is an unincorporated area in Pasco County, just on the outskirts of Tampa, and it is mostly mobile homes. In fact, 75% of the population here is in lower income homes. It is a poor mobile home community that has been dealing with poverty, a lot of drug addiction, lots of overdoses, high crime rates. This area has a horrible reputation. It also lacks infrastructure, with a lot of areas flooding, roads being unpaved. Many of the people here have no access to basic utilities at times, or if they do have access to utilities, it's definitely below expectations. The population here is overwhelmingly white, but over the last few years, the Hispanic community has started to grow. This area has been struggling for a long time. Definitely an area you should avoid within Tampa area. And it is known to be the home of several hate groups. Very dangerous. You might think that a rural setting like this will be quiet and peaceful, but the reality is the complete opposite. Many people have gone as far as putting up fences over 10 feet tall to keep people from going into the properties to steal. Number 1, the worst place to live in Tampa is Palmetto. Located in Manatee County, it is on the southern end of Tampa metropolitan area. It is an area that is plagued with homelessness, crime, and some of the nastiest people you're going to meet anywhere in the Tampa area. Palmetto is right next to Bradenton, Florida, and a lot of the homelessness and crime and the worst things of Bradenton, Florida have overflowed into Palmetto. The area is plagued with homelessness, addiction, poverty, extraordinarily high crime rates. A recent infamous news article out of St. Petersburg, Florida puts a gang bust right here, finding gold, chains, drugs, gun, money, all that. A lot of illicit activity both from Tampa, St. Pete, and Bradenton are actually all going to hide all of their illegal activities here in Palmetto. It is like a haven of crime. Homelessness is everywhere, and many of these homeless camps are some of the most dangerous I've seen anywhere in the state of Florida. Gang-controlled areas, very violent, very dangerous. Palmetto really is a crap hole. I used to take rides from Uber to this area, and I have completely stopped taking them because it is so dangerous, it isn't worth it. About 30 to 40% of the passengers become problematic. These people have problems following simple rules, like what is required to make it from point A to point B on an Uber ride. They simply have no self-control, no self-discipline. Many of the passengers that I pick up here on Uber are engaging in some type of illegal activity, whether it's delivering narcotics or something else illegal. And sometimes you ever see women that are clearly being abused or trafficked. The things that you see coming out of Palmetto are absolutely horrifying. It really is the worst place you could live anywhere in the Tampa area. Despite being a small town, it really has collected some of the worst elements of all the surrounding cities, and because of its affordability and renting, some of the worst components of all these other large cities in the area end up putting all of their garbage residents here. Palmetto, Florida really is a place where people are nasty, and it is an undesirable place to live. The population here is overwhelmingly more females than males because many of the males are simply off in prison. According to city data, in 2022, over 17% of the population here was living in poverty. 52% of the black population is in poverty here, and 43% of the Hispanic population. Interestingly, only 7% of the white population is in poverty, and they make up about 60% of the town's population. So you can start to see that there's definitely a very contrast between races and incomes in this particular area of Manatee County. Despite Palmetto being a small place, there are 124 registered offenders living in Palmetto, with a ratio of 1 in every 113 people being a registered offender. Some of those are homeless registered offenders. Scary crap. They have had 18 homicides since 2009. For a town of only 13,000 people, that is absolutely pathetic. That makes Palmetto about as dangerous as Atlanta or Jacksonville by homicide rate. Yet the biggest hassle in living in Palmetto is that there are only 2 bridges that connect Palmetto to Bradenton, and during rush hours, they're completely at a standstill because most of the people that live in Palmetto have to commute into Bradenton for work, since after all, there's nothing in Palmetto. You may think that Palmetto is my personal experiences in this town that have been horrible, but when you look at the income statistics, when you look at the homicide rates, everything else, it is also analytically the worst place to live anywhere in the Tampa area. And there it is. Those are the top 10 worst places you can live in the Tampa area. Again, if you live in one of these places and it ended up on today's list, it would be very difficult for you to try to prove that it doesn't belong on this list, because after all, I considered about 43 different places in the Tampa area that could have made today's list. So there was definitely a lot of competition to be on this list, but your town won. Have you ever been to any of the places on today's list? Let me hear your thoughts and opinions. And if there's somewhere else in the Tampa area that you think should have made it but didn't, let me know.